Declan, I don't know about you, but I have to say pig butchering was a new term to me. I hadn't heard of it before.
Me either.
It's part of our conversation today with a mystery man who you could have walked past in the street in Northern Ireland 100 times.
Yeah, we'll explain why he's a mystery man in a second, but pig butchering, as I understand it, is an online scam.
Butchering or butchering?
Don't start me on that. Have we had this discussion before about butchering? But what is it? A butcher?
It's a real Belfast thing,
What
because
is?
people in Belfast will either say butcher or butcher.
But I see. I think I grew up saying a butcher, and then somewhere along the line it became butcher. A pig butchering. I don't even know which one you think I should be saying.
I'm not being prescriptive.
Now.
I was just saying butchering or butchering.
Well, both. And this man who we're going to speak to today has dedicated his life to uncovering the people behind these scams, revealing their tactics. I think it's fair to say getting up their nose, annoying them, sometimes bringing them to police, and warning the rest of us about how not to fall foul to their tactics.
Yeah, that's the key part. He's known as Jim Browning, but that's not his real name, and he'll explain shortly why he keeps his identity private. But suffice to say, he's facing down some very serious and some very dangerous people.
Yeah, he was there trying to hack into his computers. He's hacking back into their computers to the point sometimes where he can literally access the CCTV of the buildings in which they are sitting, and they're targeting people around the world. So in that sense, I suppose he is formidable, and what he does has led to thousands of arrests.
And he records everything he does and posts it on social media, and he has millions of followers. You might also know him from the BBC's Scam Interceptors programme. Interceptors. I knew I'd said it wrong, but I couldn't think why.
Hot kettle black. It's pronounced Interceptors, Tara. We should also say that I've moved seats. I'm so pleased. I've moved seats. I'm normally over that side. But because Jim protects his identity, and he will explain why, he's agreed to speak to us on the basis that we don't show his face. So I've budged round the table, and when Jim joined us, he has the hood up because he takes his own protection very seriously for, understandable reasons.
Welcome to The State of Us. Hello, Declan Harvey.
Hello, Tara Mills.
Hello, Jim Browning.
Hello, Tara. Hello, Declan.
Why is it that you keep your identity so secret?
Because that's not your name.
Yeah.
It's not my name, and for anybody who can see this, I'm actually wearing a hoodie and a mask. I normally do that, and it's really to protect
during
my
interviews.
identity.
You do it during interviews.
I do it during interviews, yes, or at least ones with cameras anyway.
Okay, yeah.
I do go to conferences without all this get-up, but the real reason is I disrupt multi-million-dollar scams, and I'd really rather not some of those people turn up at my door someday. So really, it's about protecting me.
So tell us how you do that.
Okay, so what I do, I'm known as a scam baiter, and that's somebody who deliberately engages with scammers. But with me, it's a little bit different because not only do I just waste their time, but I also attempt to run the scam in reverse. So if they want access to my computer, I will let them on, but with the view that I can get back to their computer. And of course, if I can see their computer, then I can see potentially who they are, where they are, and even see their faces and get their real name. So I try to run the scam in reverse.
So when you are able to do that, when it's a successful scam bait, what do you do with that information?
So, well, I put a lot of it onto YouTube. So if you search for my name, Jim Browning, on YouTube, you'll see exactly what I do. But the whole idea with the YouTube channel is to really educate people about scams, but in a fairly entertaining way. And if you look for that name, you'll see lots and lots of videos. And basically it breaks down the scam. I'm one of these people who likes to kind of dig deep into a scam. I want to know who it is on the phone who's calling me. What are they really up to? Of course, they're always after money, but it'd be nice to know who they are and where they are so that actually eventually I can report them to the relevant authorities. They tend to be in foreign countries. A lot of the telephone-based ones will come from India, and I do attempt to report them to the police there and have had some fairly limited success in that country, but better ones in other countries as well.
So without, well, at the risk of making you sound immodest, how skilled are you? How kind of complex is what you're doing? Because it sounds to the common ear incredibly complex, but actually, it's that Liam Neeson thing. I have a certain set of skills. I mean, how, how
Yeah,
talking about your set of skills.
you certainly need to have a bit of technical competency to do what I do. So my background is not doing scam baiting. Although I've got a 10-year-old YouTube channel, up until very recently, I had a normal day job, albeit in IT. But that IT background, I think, has really helped me in what I am doing at the moment, because it is important to have certain safety precautions. You definitely don't want to use, just for example, your real computer with real files on it. So I have what's called a virtual computer, and it's set up so even if a scammer comes onto it, they won't be able to find out who I am. There won't be any files telling them my real name. They won't be able to find my real location and so on. So there's a certain amount of precautions that you need to take when you do this. But of course, the people on the other end, a lot of people think that they're experts. You know, these people who run these scams, they must be very technically sophisticated. And that's not always the case. And I take advantage of that. And you can literally have people who have been handed a script to say on the phone, and that is as much training as they'll have had. So if I can take them off that script, and I usually do, then it can lead to some very interesting results. And you would be surprised sometimes the lack of security when the scammers actually try to scam other people. And I can take advantage of that and have done. And I've even gone as far as, because I can get access to one computer, I can potentially see their entire network, including things like CCTV, and even overhear other phone calls that they're making running the scam. So I can do all of that because I probably understand their systems maybe better than they do.
And you've been doing it for 10 years, as you say. You've millions of followers on YouTube. I was reading some of the comments. They're saying he's the legend. He's the daddy of all scam baiters. But how did this all come about? Have you ever been scammed yourself? Is that how it happened?
I wish that was, I keep being asked that question, how did you get into this? And the answer is slightly more boring than, it's not the kind of Batman thing. I'm out to avenge something. And I nearly wish that they had managed to take money off me at some point in the past. But sadly, that isn't the case. No, like a lot of people, I, in my job, would have worked at home a fair bit. And like most people, if you've got a landline especially, I get lots and lots of those scam phone calls. And I'm an engineer. I like to dig into things quite deeply. I like to understand the systems and so on. And I thought, well, maybe I can engage with these guys to see just how competent they are. And I'll try to run the scam in reverse. And that's really where it started. That idea about maybe I could do something about it, because I have got that technical background. So it isn't much more than curiosity about how their scam works, but really picking it apart and finding out, well, obviously they're after money, but how do they get that money? What systems do they use? How do they launder that money? And that's, for me, quite an interesting area.
So how do you find them? Do you go looking for them or do they go looking for you? How does that side of it work?
Yeah, well, in some ways I'm lucky, or you could call it unlucky, because I'm on what's called a mugs list. So at some
Tara's
point...
on one of them.
It's a different one, though.
Yeah, well, this one is a list of people who scammers think have paid them in the past. So what I do is I quite deliberately let them run to the end of their scam, the point where they want to get money from me. And I will give them, quite, for example, fake credit card numbers, but they'll be legit. They'll be able to put it into systems. It will look like a real one, but it will never work, of course. And because of that, my details get sold to other scam call centers. And that is the problem. If you ever have been scammed, unfortunately a lot of people have, you will tend to find that you will get more phone calls, more emails, more SMSs as a result, because your data sadly is being sold in other countries.
You are a known soft touch in that.
Correct, yeah. And to be honest, scammers prefer people who seem to have been scammed before, because they're unfortunately more likely to be scammed again.
But do you have to be... I'm trying to phrase this delicately, but I won't. Do you have to be stupid to be scammed?
No, quite simply. And to be honest, no one should ever blame anyone who has been the victim of a scam, because don't forget, the people, although I've described them as not incredibly technically sophisticated, what they are good at is social engineering. They are incredibly good at convincing people that they're legitimate. And if you sit on the outside and think, how on under earth could anyone fall for whatever the scam is? The answer is absolutely anyone, including me, including you guys, including your parents, including your children, whoever it is, anyone can fall victim to a scam, simply because you're up against a network of professionals. They will know exactly what to say to you. They have, even if your circumstances are a little bit unique, they will have techniques that they can use to convince you that they're legitimate. Now, some of them are more obvious, of course, than others. But if you have never heard of a particular scam, and there's new scams coming about all the time, then absolutely anyone can fall for that. So, don't ever blame someone who has fallen prey to a scam. Blame the scammer. That's where the blame should lie.
I did a story about a man who was scammed of his entire pension fund a couple of years ago, and when he described to me how it operated, it was cryptocurrency. It was over a very long period of time. He built up a relationship with somebody that he thought was completely legitimate, and they would check in. This is when it was very small amounts of money. And, you're surrounded by people who make money on cryptocurrency. So there were definitely things that you could see exactly how he ended up being scammed, and it was very sophisticated over, as I say, over a very long period of time. But I was quite surprised by other people's reaction to that story, which was really, he was stupid. How could you possibly do that?
I've heard university professors on the phone with some of these guys who are running the scam, and quite literally, if you have never heard of that scam before, then why wouldn't you believe someone who is convincing on the phone? So no, I think the idea is never blame the victim, blame the scammer. And if people need support in all of that, they should not be subject to people saying, well, how on earth would anyone fall for that? They can themselves.
Yeah, just to say in that case, because there was a really important element to it, he did eventually get the money back, which was fantastic. Because the bank was held responsible for allowing that amount of money to be moved. But he had incredible help from Trading Standards. And I just don't think we even realise that Trading Standards, that's one of the things that they do, and they supported him through the whole system.
Yeah, it's with that one. And I guess that was an investment scam, but they had built a relationship. I have seen those exact scams. And if you did your homework on it, and in other words, dug really deep into some of the ones that I'm looking at even at the minute, you would see, for example, that they do have an accreditation. They do sponsor, for example, very large football teams. And from the outset, if you looked at the website, if you looked at the correspondence that they give you, and they will give you regular email updates, they look incredibly convincing.
What do you mean they sponsor football teams?
So one group, for example, is, the way you will see logos of certain companies on the background of, some of the televised events, or if they're interviewing players after the event, you will see certain logos behind them. So they literally sponsor, in some cases, national football teams with this scam website. And you think, well, how on earth would a company who are a scam even be able to afford or get into the position of sponsoring a major national football team? But they can, and they do.
So are they hiding behind another company? So the scammers, are a few steps behind that? Because you're thinking, well, what are the checks and balances on the football
Indeed.
team's side of things, you know, surely they should, because that's part of the problem, isn't it? If you see that and you're watching football and you see that and you've recognition of a brand and then you see it on your computer or it
I mean,
comes up, then
it feels like we don't stand a chance.
yeah.
Exactly. And that's what I mean by, you know, how on earth could you fall for this investment scam? Well, the idea is that these guys are so good about what they do, they cover all their bases, they get the accreditations that they need. In fact, what we are speculating at the minute may have happened is they started off as a legitimate company, perhaps to get the good reviews, and then have moved to scamming because they do nothing but scam right now. So we don't know the background, but we're digging into it.
You've used the term investment scam. Is there a kind of a set 4 or 5 different categories of scams that you've come across, and what are they?
Yeah, I mean, I think I looked at, there's a website called scammer.info, and it's got a whole set of scams that can be looked at. And I think there's something like 13 different categories. So there's a refund scam, an investment scam, what they call a pig butchering scam, which is a cross between a romance scam and an investment scam. There's all sorts there, but
Which is that you make someone think that they're in a relationship to get them to invest. So
exactly. So they will actually sign up on dating sites, build a literal relationship with someone on a dating site, and then say, "Oh, we've been going out virtually. Of course, they'll never meet the person, but we've been going out virtually for weeks or months. Why don't you do what I'm doing? Hey, look, I'm investing in this. This is how I've made all my money." And they will show photographs of this man or woman in very exotic locations, lovely hotels, driving super sports cars and so on. And of course, there'll be questions about, well, how did you make the money? And they're told to say, well, it's basically through this website, and the website's a scam.
Does AI feed into this? Is there a potential that this is just going to get much worse because it will be so much easier? You won't need the person sitting in the call center in some country across the world, that it'll just be done by a computer?
Yeah, that's my biggest fear at the minute. So these ones where they build a relationship with someone, that would lend itself very easily to AI. Now, I haven't seen very much of it. In fact, recently there have been call centers in the likes of really the Far East, so Myanmar and Cambodia and even Dubai, where they have literally thousands of people sitting, some of them being forced into scamming. So it's like almost slave labor in those countries where they're forced to correspond with people, and they have, things like their passports taken away from them. They would get beatings if they left the camp that they're in. So there's a very famous one called KK Park, which is in the Myanmar border. And everyone who's there has been human trafficked to that site, and they cannot leave. So, but nevertheless, it needs thousands of people at the minute to run that sort of scam. But eventually, I would say AI may take over that kind of human traffic element of it.
And just go back one level then. Who is trafficking them? Who are the dark powers behind this that force you to sit in front of us with a hood as well? Who are these people?
So it tends to be with something like, I mentioned pig butchering scam. So that is probably the biggest growing scam threat that there is today. Pig butchering and something called the task scam. And the people who run that sort of scam are almost invariably Chinese gangs. It tends to be Chinese mafia, in fact. And they are the people who will traffic people to the likes of Myanmar or Cambodia. They will be the people who will run that sort of scam, often laundering money through casinos as a front end. But behind all of that, where the money really comes in, is running effectively investment scams, but they start off as those romance scams. So yes, Chinese gangs, unfortunately, are one of the biggest culprits in all of that.
And what is the task scam?
So task scam is, you will get a message out of the blue, usually as an SMS or a WhatsApp, and it will say, are you interested in a job? So, it's just something which looks fairly innocent. If you engage with the person, say, yes, I might be interested, they will say, well, here, this is all you need to do. And they will give you a very simple task, like review a website, but make sure you give it 5 stars. Or we're looking at a restaurant or hotel today. click on, make a little comment beside it, or review this item and give it a 5-star rating. And it's deliberately designed to be a very easy task to do, and you genuinely earn a small amount of money for doing that. So they gain your trust, as in they get you to complete a task, they do pay you, but that builds up to the next part of the scam, and that is that you now need to complete more tasks, and they're a little bit more complicated. And it gets to the point where you have to put in your own money to complete the tasks. And that's really what the scam is all about. If they'd started off with, you need to pay in to get something out, most people would reject that. But because they have been paid, albeit small amounts, they have built the trust. And that's what they rely on for the task scam.
So then when they target you because they think you're a soft touch, is there anything that you say to kind of, if you like, get them on the hook? Or do you just kind of play along and do what you're told?
Well, particularly with the technical scams, I play a role. So I have a lot of fake identities. I even have fake passport pictures and driving licenses to make me look like an old man, or indeed an old woman. I have a voice changer. And that sometimes lulls the scammers into a false sense of security. If they think I'm older or vulnerable, I deliberately make mistakes. I don't make my typing quite correct. I ask them the kind of questions that somebody who's not very technical would ask. So I deliberately play that role to try and build a false sense of security in the scammer. And I can then make use of that. So absolutely, I play a role, and I have various identities to help me carry that.
And how long might you be stringing them along for?
It depends on the scam. Now, sometimes if they're telephone-based ones, it will only be an hour or two. But with those romance ones, those quite deliberately go on for weeks or months. They want to build a relationship with me. And if they see me moving too fast, or they are a little bit suspicious that somebody's maybe is a scam bait or is winding them up, then they will drop the call. So I have to play a role for that. So it depends on the scam.
Tell us just briefly about Dubai.
Yeah. So we mentioned pig butchering scams. This is the romance and the investment scam. There was a Chinese gang running a very large pig butchering scam operation in Dubai. This is about probably a year and a half ago at this stage. And I managed to get someone who was inside that scam call center already. He reached out to me, emailed me, and said, look, I'm part of this operation, don't like what's going on. Can you help expose it? Now, why he came to me rather than go directly to the police, I don't know. Maybe he trusted a YouTuber more than the police. Again, I'm not really sure. But to cut a very long story short, he was able to prove that he was inside this call center. He sent me video and audio. He gave me access to some of their computers, and I could see exactly what was going on. I reported this to the Dubai police. In fact, I worked with a group who actually sent representatives from victims in Australia over to Dubai to liaise directly with the police, because they always need a victim. And the long and short of it was, the police initially did nothing. So I then released the video, and it must have embarrassed, I think, someone fairly high up in that country. And about 11 weeks later, they actually raided the scam call center, who were still operating even though the video had gone out. And long and short of it was, they arrested about 2,000 people who were involved in the scam. I think probably one of the single biggest arrests of scammers in one location anywhere in the world, and deported most of them.
How do you stay one step ahead?
It's difficult, but the way I personally do this is I engage with the scams, whatever form it takes. So because I'm on the mug list, I just let the scammers come to me. And even if the scams change, and they kind of do from time to time, and AI is a big buzzword, of course, and scammers are making use of AI to various degrees, but still some of the old-fashioned, the old kind of telephone-based scams are still working. And obviously they're still working because they're still running it. You still hear those calls, so they're still effective. But I think the message is getting across a little bit more about certainly some of the older scams. And I work with the BBC Scam Interceptors team to help kind of highlight this is what real scams look like in the UK. And that does help. And if you ever get a chance to see some of that, they are very realistic.
It's
Because
on the iPlayer, isn't it?
yes, all in the iPlayer. And, you know, as scams evolve, though, I will be following them along, and you will see that on my channel and with the BBC Scam Interceptors programme.
What is your feel for that in terms of how much resource the PSNI is giving to this area of crime, online crime?
Yeah, I probably can't answer directly for the PSNI, but my experience overall is that, particularly when it's cyber-related crime in general, so if it's anything to do with, I've received an email with this invoice, or I've got this SMS message, or anything to do with investment scams or anything online in general, you tend to find that the police response is not as good as it would be if it was one of the, let's just say, non-online crimes, a physical crime. If it was a bank robbery, I would say most people in the police would know what to do. If it's an online bank robbery, almost the opposite's the case. There's only a few, in my experience, specialist officers who can deal with that. So my overall impression, it's probably the same for PSNI, although I'm not sure, is they're probably very under-resourced in that area. And I think that's probably why the likes of me and other scam baiters, they're probably grateful for information being passed along, because I would say that probably helps them immensely.
It's difficult though, isn't it? Because you have this sense that there are kind of global operatives working that are ahead of the game when it comes to technology, and where, you know, when it comes to big organisations, and if we look at schools and education, it's similar there, isn't it? It feels as if schools are always on the back foot slightly on this.
Yep. And I would love to see at least a slot for, let's talk about scams. Let's talk about some of the types of crimes that can happen to younger people. And you would be surprised the amount of online scams that there are. And it doesn't just affect older people. And it doesn't have to be a boring subject. You know, scams are fascinating anyway. But maybe if you can show some of the things that you see in my YouTube channel or you see on Scam Interceptors, that could make the lesson a bit more interesting, you know.
Are you breaking the law? Because you're going back up the pipe. You're hacking into their system. You're looking at their CCTV cameras without permission. What legal area are you living in?
Yeah, so I mean, I'm asked this quite a lot, and if you look
The
at
worst thing you can say.
I know, I was just to say, really boring
Because
question.
when you're doing an
Declan.
interview and people go, great question, you go, yeah, great question. But when a guest says, I'm asked that a lot, I'm like, oh, shucks. Okay. But I am interested nonetheless in the answer.
It's an interesting question, because it is the whole reason why the police don't do exactly what I do. Very, very strictly, if you access somebody's computer without their permission, then you're breaking the law. I'm accessing a scammer's computer without their permission, obviously. So in theory, I'm breaking the law. Now, well, in practice probably as well. But the only people who could ever bring a complaint about that are the scammers themselves. And I've been doing this for quite a while at this stage. And believe me, never once has a formal complaint ever been raised. You will get people who are very angry when they find out that they're on YouTube. Okay, but that is a far cry from, I want to go back to the police, say in the UK, to try to prosecute Jim Browning. That has never happened. And put it this way, I would relish the point that someone actually did that, because they would have to explain why they stole money from me in the first, or tried to steal money from me in the first place. It's just not going to happen.
Well, you're saying bring it on.
Absolutely, I do. Now, honestly, it's not a challenge, okay? But at the same time, I think it would only go one way, and it would be in favour of me.
And what would you say to people as a final point from me? You know, don't leave the scam baiting to the scam baiters, and just try to keep yourself as safe as possible. I mean, very few people would have the expertise to know how to do what you're doing.
You don't have to go as far as what I'm doing. You know, if you can waste a scammer's time, if you can wind them up, if you can have a bit of a laugh at their expense, why not do that? I encourage actually everybody to be a scam baiter in some respect. Like I say, you don't have to go and hack their computers. Okay, that's probably beyond most people. Doesn't matter. If you can say, oh, hold on a minute, I'm just going to get my glasses. or hold on a minute, I've there's somebody at my door, and just leave the phone. You know, you don't even have to talk to them. If you can waste their time, that's a good thing because they're not scamming your parents or your children.
That's so interesting because the advice I've given other relatives is just don't answer it, don't delete it, put it away, don't. So that's so fascinating.
I mean, that's the other alternative, but you know, it's going to cost them a little bit of money with you just putting them on hold for a while. You know, give them sorry, somebody else at my door. You know, keep them on the phone as long as humanly possible. That's my view, but only because I like winding them up.
Well, speaking of winding people up, he told us a great story there at the end.
Yeah, he did. Well, first of all, thanks, Jim Browning, for coming in.
Absolutely.
Yes. And I'm struck by both the depth of his technical knowledge, but also his sense of mischief and humour, which is so fundamental to what he's doing. He'll take these guys down if he can, but he'll have a bit of fun for himself. He'll what's the word I'm looking for? Entertain himself.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose in that line of work you would need to.
Yeah, I suppose.
But he told, he told a great story there where he had kind of messed around with a scammer and had accidentally posted. Yeah, allegedly, he obviously didn't post the money, but he had told the scammer that he had posted this money to a particular address that he wasn't supposed to do. The scammer then panics, and then Jim says, "Oh, but now I've sent all that money. Now I have no money left." And then he gets the scammer to send groceries to a random address in New York because he's now penniless.
And I presume the scammer's doing it to build trust and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But, yeah, funny.
I know. Or was it a scammer with a guilty conscience? Because why would he do that whenever he thinks that Jim has sent all his money away and he has nothing left? He doesn't even have money for groceries, but he's got a sense of humour. That's for sure.
Yeah. You can find more of Jim's work on BBC Scam Interceptors, which is on the iPlayer. Amazing that he's doing all that from some unknown corner of Northern Ireland.
Brilliant stuff.
Thank you for, again, to all those who came along to our live shows at the Belfast Media Festival. All those episodes are still available on BBC Sounds, along with the back catalogue that we've been building up on The State of Us.
And thanks also for everyone watching on YouTube.
Email us, thestateofus@bbc.co.uk.
And we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.